Hey everyone, glad you're here. And today we're looking at 27 neighborhood beefs that started petty and somehow turned into full scale wars.
Suburbia, where the lawns are perfect, the neighbors are not, and every fence is a battlefield. 1. The Great Fence of Texas. In one quiet Texas suburb, a man spent 3 years building what he called a privacy-enhancing art installation. Translation: a 12-foot wooden wall painted entirely black and facing directly into his neighbor's kitchen window. When the neighbor complained, the man argued it was his emotional support fence. The HOA ruled against him, but he refused to remove it, claiming the fence was part of a spiritual boundary practice from his yoga class. The feud escalated when the neighbor installed a floodlight bright enough to land airplanes. The local police had to mediate between Team Wall and Team Light, and the standoff only ended when both men got citations for property blight and energy waste. No one won except the hardware store that sold them both thousands in supplies. 2. The Flamingo Massacre of Florida. In a Florida retirement community, one woman had a deep love for plastic flamingos. She decorated her yard with 47 of them, one for each state she'd visited. Her neighbor, a retired military man, saw the flock as a visual assault on order. So he launched Operation Flamingo Freedom. Under cover of darkness, he began removing one flamingo each night and replacing it with a tiny American flag. By the time she noticed, half her birds had been liberated. She called the police, who arrived to find 2 senior citizens yelling about avian terrorism. The local news picked it up, and suddenly the whole neighborhood was taking sides. In the end, the HOA declared a truce. Both flamingos and flags were banned. America's first truly bipartisan compromise. 3. The Lawnmower Revenge of Ohio. A man in Ohio was fined repeatedly by his neighbor for mowing too early in the morning. After the 3rd ticket, he decided to retaliate with precision. He started mowing at exactly midnight, using a silent battery-powered mower. But that wasn't enough revenge. He installed motion-activated sprinklers aimed at his neighbor's driveway, timed perfectly for when they left for work. Soon, both households had cameras, alarms, and dueling lawn care schedules. The feud reached peak absurdity when one family hired a bagpipe player to perform during the neighbor's Sunday naps. The city finally intervened, issuing a joint noise violation and calling it mutual auditory combat. The mayor summed it up best: some people fight wars for oil. These two fought for grass. 4. The Christmas Apocalypse of Arizona. It started with one man's holiday cheer and ended like a seasonal Cold War. A dentist in suburban Arizona decided to go all out with his Christmas decorations, synchronized lights, animatronic reindeer, and a Santa that shouted "Ho, ho, ho" every 7 seconds. His neighbor, a nurse who worked night shifts, begged him to tone it down. Instead, he added more lights, 42,000 of them, according to the HOA complaint. By mid-December, planes were using his house as a visual landmark. The neighbor responded by covering her house in blackout curtains and hanging a massive banner reading "Noel, my foot." The standoff escalated until the HOA fined them both, him for light pollution, her for unseasonal profanity. The police finally stepped in when drivers began stopping in the street to film the Christmas combat zone. The dentist's final words before taking down the display: "You can't find the spirit of Christmas." The HOA disagreed and doubled it. 5. The Kentucky Grass War. In a quiet cul-de-sac in Kentucky, 2 neighbors turned lawn maintenance into a full-contact sport. One had the most meticulously manicured grass in the county. He measured each blade with scissors. The other, a self-proclaimed eco-warrior, let his lawn grow wild to encourage pollinators. When the tidy neighbor reported the jungle to the HOA, the eco-warrior retaliated by planting a bee sanctuary right at the property line. Within weeks, the manicured man's yard looked like a pollen crime scene. He counterattacked by installing an industrial-strength mosquito fogger that wiped out everything, including the HOA president's roses 2 houses down. The dispute escalated to small claims court, where the judge sighed and ordered them to act like adults. They didn't. The next spring, they entered a local garden competition and tied for second. Nature, it seems, thrives on pettiness. 6. The Oregon Driveway Opera. In Portland, a man was furious that his neighbor parked partially on the sidewalk in front of his house every day. He left polite notes, then angry ones, then, finally, an opera. Yes, he began singing his complaints through a megaphone each morning. "Move your Subaru, Sharon," became a neighborhood hit. The story went viral after someone posted a video of his full 3-minute area, complete with backup vocals from the local kids' choir. Sharon retaliated by blasting polka music from her car stereo whenever he mowed the lawn. The HOA's mediation meeting reportedly ended with everyone humming his tune. Eventually, both neighbors were fined, but not before the man released a parody album titled "No Parking in My Heart." Ironically, it sold enough copies to pay his HOA fees for the year. 7. The fence that spied in Colorado. A Colorado man built what he called a defensive observation fence, a 7-foot wooden barrier with a hidden camera facing his neighbor's backyard. He claimed it was to protect his property from noise. His neighbor, a retired engineer, disagreed and used a drone to prove the camera was recording her family barbecues. She then installed her own security camera aimed directly back at his fence. Within days, they were locked in a cold war of surveillance, each claiming self-defense under state law. The HOA called it a privacy arms race and demanded both remove their tech toys. Neither complied. The battle ended when a hailstorm destroyed both cameras, and they accused each other of weather manipulation. The local news called it Suburbia's version of espionage. Somewhere, the CIA took notes. 8. The Great Leaf Blower Uprising of Illinois. It started with one man's Saturday morning leaf blower and ended with a neighborhood rebellion. Every weekend, like clockwork, he'd begin at 6 a.m., blasting his driveway clean with military precision. His neighbors begged him to stop. He didn't. So they fought back, creating a counteroffensive called Operation Rake. Every time he started blowing leaves, half the block came outside to rake noisily in unison, drowning him out. The noise became so unbearable that the HOA called an emergency meeting, where everyone arrived with their leaf blowers. It was chaos, half the crowd yelling, half humming to drown the noise. The local paper described it as Woodstock for suburban dads. Finally, the HOA banned all yard tools before 9 a.m. But the man had the last laugh. He bought a battery-powered blower and labeled it Silent Justice. 9. The Trash Can Treaty of Nevada. In a Las Vegas suburb where lawns looked copy-pasted from a Home Depot catalog, one homeowner broke the ultimate rule, leaving his trash cans out 1 hour past pickup time. His neighbor, a retired teacher with too much free time and a tape measure, started documenting each violation with time-stamped photos. Soon, she had a 38-page dossier titled Evidence of Municipal Disrespect. When he ignored her, she escalated, placing his cans back on his driveway the moment the truck left, as if teaching a lesson. He retaliated by gluing googly eyes on her mailbox and labeling it Neighborhood Surveillance Unit. Things spiraled into absurdity when both began submitting competing HOA reports on psychological littering. The board finally stepped in, forcing them to sign an official trash can treaty that specified precise can placement times and GPS coordinates. They both signed it and immediately violated it. The HOA quit trying. Sanitation workers now call that street the DMZ. 10. The Pool Noodle Rebellion of California. In a sunny California cul-de-sac, one homeowner installed a $60,000 backyard pool, complete with lights, fountains, and speakers blasting Jimmy Buffett. His neighbor hated the sound of Margaritaville so much that she started tossing pool noodles over the fence every time the song played. At first it was funny. Then it got weird. She began labeling each noodle with passive-aggressive messages. "Turn it down, pirate. Your playlist is a crime." Eventually, the man filmed a time-lapse of over 200 noodles invading his yard, calling it the Great Floaty War. It went viral online, attracting both support and noodle donations. When the HOA tried to intervene, the noodle thrower claimed artistic expression under free speech laws. The judge dismissed the case as absurd but creative. The feud ended only when she moved, ironically, to a beachfront condo next to a Jimmy Buffett tribute bar. Fate has a sense of humor. 11. The Tennessee Flaming Hot Feud. In Nashville, two next-door grill masters turned barbecue into blood sport. One swore by Kansas City sauce, the other by Carolina vinegar. Every weekend, they competed for dominance, smoke filling the cul-de-sac like a battlefield fog. One day, after a particularly heated exchange about brisket rubs, one man placed a sign in his yard reading, "Real BBQ only, vegetarians use next door." The other responded with a banner reading, "Microwave Chef lives here." They both filed noise complaints about offensive sizzle sounds. Things peaked when they each hosted rival block parties on the same day, forcing neighbors to pick sides. The HOA finally banned competitive grilling events entirely. Now, once a year, they begrudgingly share a smoker during the neighborhood picnic, a ceasefire known locally as the Treaty of Meat. 12. The Georgia Mailbox Siege. In rural Georgia, a man decided to replace his boring standard mailbox with something more patriotic. He installed a 6-foot-tall bald eagle statue gripping the box in its talons. His neighbor, a minimalist artist, said it disturbed her aura. She reported it as an aggressive avian structure. He responded by painting the eagle's eyes red and adding motion sensors that made it screech when she walked by. Within days, the entire neighborhood joined the fight, some adding their own defensive decor. Soon, the street looked like a parade of freedom-themed chaos. Flaming mailboxes, glitter eagles, and one inexplicable Statue of Liberty made of beer cans. The HOA finally ordered all unauthorized patriotic installations removed. The man refused, saying, "You can take my mailbox, but not my freedom." The eagle remains, now with sunglasses. 13. The Pennsylvania Pumpkin War. Every Halloween, one Pennsylvania family carved 50 elaborate pumpkins. Their neighbor, a strict minimalist, called it seasonal clutter. After years of tension, he took revenge by stealing one pumpkin each night and returning it rotten. The family set up cameras, caught him, and decided to retaliate creatively. The next year, they carved his face into every single pumpkin. 50 glowing versions of his scowling expression stared from their porch like a suburban horror movie. He called the cops, who reportedly couldn't stop laughing. The HOA tried to mediate, suggesting a shared pumpkin display. Instead, both families escalated, the minimalist covering his house in fake tombstones reading "Here lies good taste." Eventually, local news covered it, dubbing it the Pumpkin Cold War. To this day, that street bans outdoor pumpkins, and the neighbor's nickname is Jacko Grumpy. 14. The Great Dog Fence Debate of North Carolina. In a sleepy Carolina town, one man built a small dog run for his terrier, complete with a mini gate, fake grass, and a sign that read Barkingham Palace. His neighbor, a retired librarian, complained that the sign was grammatically incorrect. She took it to the HOA, citing linguistic property concerns. When they refused to act, she retaliated by reading aloud from grammar textbooks during his dog's playtime, claiming educational purpose. He fought back by teaching the dog to bark every time she said semicolon. The feud became so notorious that a local news outlet filmed a segment called Grammar versus Growler. Eventually, the HOA banned decorative signs altogether, but the dog remained undefeated, barking triumphantly every time she walked by with her copy of The Elements of Style. 15. The New Jersey Flag Feud. In a quiet New Jersey neighborhood, patriotism turned personal. One man flew a massive 30-foot American flag from a pole that could probably withstand a hurricane. His neighbor, annoyed by the constant flapping, filed a noise complaint claiming it sounded like a helicopter crash every night. When the town sided with the flag owner, she countered by flying her own flag, of New Jersey, on an even taller pole. Soon others joined. Someone added an Italian flag. Another hoisted a giant skull and crossbones just to stir things up. The sky looked like a diplomatic crisis. The HOA finally created an ordinance limiting flagpoles to 8 feet, but the first man argued it didn't apply to legacy installations. His solution? He installed a second pole for backup patriotism. The wind never stopped, and neither did the argument. 16. The Minnesota Snowblower. Standoff winter in Minnesota can test the strongest friendships and destroy the weakest property lines. Two neighbors shared a long driveway for 15 peaceful years until one accused the other of snow blowing aggressively. The complaint? He was allegedly pushing snow 3 inches over the invisible boundary. What started as a friendly misunderstanding turned into a frosty feud. One morning, both men fired up their snowblowers at dawn, meeting in the middle like dueling knights in neon parkas. The noise was deafening, the snow plume epic. A third neighbor filmed it and titled the video, "Blow Hard 2, Suburban Drift." When the city threatened fines, they tried mediation. But the mediator's car got stuck in their shared snowbank. The dispute only ended when spring arrived and melted the evidence. By summer, they'd both bought new snowblowers. bigger ones. It's not about the driveway anymore. It's about honor. 17. The New Mexico Garden Gnome Mutiny. In a sun-baked Albuquerque neighborhood, one woman adored her garden gnomes. She had over 80 of them. Sunbathing, fishing, even one suspiciously dressed as Elvis. Her neighbor called it visual pollution and secretly began stealing them one by one, mailing ransom notes cut from Better Homes and Gardens. The woman fought back by replacing every missing gnome with 2 new ones. Within weeks, her yard looked like a magical uprising. When police finally caught the thief, he claimed the gnomes were staring at him in judgment. The judge ordered restitution and, for poetic justice, community service at a local nursery. The case became local legend, with residents leaving tiny ceramic lawyers in their yards in solidarity. Now, every spring, the HOA hosts a Gnome Amnesty Day, where people can return any borrowed decorations, no questions asked. Participation remains suspiciously high. Shaba. The Florida Flamingo Flood. A retiree in Sarasota loved his pink plastic flamingos, so much that he filled his yard with hundreds of them, forming what he proudly called the largest artificial flock south of Orlando. His new neighbor, an ex-Navy engineer with an eye for symmetry, couldn't stand the chaos. So, in an act of suburban sabotage, he flooded his own sprinkler system overnight, turning the lawn into a shallow pink lagoon. The retiree awoke to find his flamingos literally floating down the street. Instead of fury, he laughed and declared victory. Now it's performance art, he told the HOA. Tourists came to take selfies. Local news called it the Great Flamingo Migration. The HOA banned mass bird displays, but the man found a loophole. He replaced them with inflatable pelicans. Same color, bigger attitude. The engineer moved 6 months later. Sarasota gained a landmark and an unofficial mascot. 19. The Wisconsin Wind Chime Wars. In a small lakeside town, peace was shattered by serenity. One woman's collection of 37 wind chimes, made of shells, bamboo, and metal tubes, turned every breeze into a symphony of madness. Her neighbor, a night shift nurse, claimed it was like sleeping inside a meditation app that won't shut off. When polite requests failed, she bought a giant fan and aimed it at the chime collection, creating a 24-hour hurricane of sound. The HOA intervened, declaring both public nuisances. They appealed, taking the battle to municipal court, where the judge reportedly sighed, "You're both equally annoying." The ruling banned wind chimes within 50 feet of any dwelling. Now the neighborhood is silent, eerily so. Locals say you can still hear ghostly jingles on windy nights, like the lingering echo of suburban vengeance. 20. The Michigan Mailbox Mayhem. A man in Grand Rapids decided to upgrade his mailbox by turning it into a replica of his favorite car, a 1967 Mustang. It was gorgeous, shiny, and completely illegal under postal regulations. His neighbor, a retired postmaster, reported it immediately. The man responded by installing a motion-activated speaker that revved engine noises every time someone opened it. Within days, the street sounded like a drag race. Fed up, the postmaster installed his mailbox shaped like a police cruiser, complete with flashing LEDs. It became a daily duel of vroom versus siren until the Postal Service intervened, calling it the most unnecessary vehicular escalation in mail history. The compromise: both agreed to return to standard mailboxes, but every July 4th, they reenact their feud for the neighborhood parade. The kids call it Mail Agedon. 21. The Idaho Fence of Infinite Pettia. In rural Idaho, 2 neighbors couldn't agree where their property line ended, so they decided to both build fences, back to back, an inch apart. The resulting wall gap became a narrow no-man's land that neither dared cross. One filled it with gravel, the other with motion sensors. Soon it looked like a Cold War border checkpoint. When one's dog got stuck in the gap, they blamed each other and called animal control, twice. The town's mayor tried to mediate, suggesting a shared garden between the fences. They refused, planting rival hedges instead. By the next spring, their dueling greenery intertwined into one massive tangled wall of vines. Tourists now visit the site, calling it the pettiest hedge in America. The neighbors still don't speak, but their plants seem to get along just fine. 22. The Utah Hot Tub Hostilities. In a Salt Lake City neighborhood where peace meant synchronized lawn mowing, 2 families went to war over a hot tub. One man installed it 5 feet from the property line, directly below his neighbor's bedroom window. The constant bubbling drove her insane. She retaliated by blasting whale sounds through a waterproof speaker every night. Soon, the hot tub zone became a bizarre soundtrack of splashing sonar and passive-aggressive sighs. When he tried to block the noise with a gazebo, she reported it as an unpermitted aquatic structure. The HOA fined them both and demanded the removal of the tub. He refused, rebranding it as a hydrotherapy station. Eventually, winter solved what the HOA couldn't. The hot tub froze solid. The neighborhood cheered. The man, undeterred, now calls it his seasonal ice lounge. The feud may be cold, but the pettiness stays piping hot. 23. The Maine Mailbox Olympics. In rural Maine, snowplows are a way of life, and a recurring villain. Every winter, the same two neighbors competed to see whose mailbox would survive the season. After a few rounds of destruction, one reinforced his box with concrete and steel beams, bragging it could stop a tank. His neighbor countered by installing his mailbox on a spring mechanism so it would bounce back when hit. The first heavy snow brought carnage. The plow demolished both, the spring one catapulting back into the driver's truck windshield. Undeterred, they escalated, welding armor plating, adding shock absorbers, even painting NASCAR logos. By the time local authorities intervened, it looked like a roadside scrapyard of failed engineering. The town finally banned fortified mail receptacles. The two men now compete in a more peaceful winter sport, passive-aggressive snowman building. 24. The Oregon Fence of Freedom. A Portland man decided to paint his backyard fence in rainbow colors as a symbol of happiness. His neighbor, who preferred neutral tones only, called it an assault on aesthetics. When the HOA ruled that color choice wasn't restricted, she got creative. She installed a giant mural on her side of a grayscale mountain range labeled "The Way Things Should Be." They ended up in a full-blown art war, adding lights, banners, and even motion-activated poetry speakers. Soon people came from all over to see the Battle of the Fences. Local artists declared it a spontaneous, open-air gallery. The feud ended only when vandals spray-painted both sides with the word "chill." Ironically, it unified them. The neighbors now co-manage the fence piece park. Sometimes pettiness really does build bridges, or at least better fences. 25. The Texas Driveway Showdown. In suburban Dallas, one man parked his truck slightly over the property line, by about 6 inches. His neighbor, a retired engineer with a laser level and too much free time, noticed. Every morning he left a note with precise measurements, accusing the truck of territorial trespass. The truck owner retaliated by spray painting a fake parking line across both driveways labeled Freedom Zone. Soon the HOA was flooded with complaints from both parties. Mediation failed when the engineer brought blueprints and the truck owner brought barbecue. When the police finally showed up, they found both men yelling while standing 6 inches apart, each holding tape measures. The officer's solution? He parked his cruiser right in the middle and said, "Now you're both wrong." Legend says that line of paint is still there, faded but eternal, marking America's smallest battlefield. 26. The Washington Watering War. In a Seattle suburb obsessed with eco-friendly living, one homeowner refused to water his lawn. Out of principle, his grass turned into a crispy beige moonscape. His neighbor, a lawn perfectionist, started watering his side of the man's yard to restore neighborhood harmony. The gesture backfired. The eco guy accused him of hydrological trespassing and installed a motion-activated sprinkler that sprayed anyone who stepped near. Within a week, the 2 yards looked like a natural gradient, from lush green to post-apocalyptic yellow. The HOA called it an aesthetic imbalance. The feud peaked when one planted drought-resistant succulents spelling the word "dry," while the other responded with hedges shaped into the word "moist." The city finally installed mandatory water restrictions, forcing both to stop. Ironically, when the rains came back, both lawns washed away. Mother Nature ended the debate with one final shh. 27. The Colorado Chicken Coup. In Boulder, a woman got city approval to raise backyard chickens. Her neighbor, a yoga instructor who valued tranquil energy, claimed the hens disrupted his sound-healing frequency. He filed a noise complaint, stating that clucks vibrated negatively with his aura. She responded by knitting each chicken a tiny sweater labeled "Certified Therapy Hen." The story went viral, inspiring locals to form the Coup coalition to support her. Furious, the yoga neighbor began blasting whale songs to restore balance. The chickens loved it. They laid twice as many eggs. The city dropped the complaint after discovering the decibel level of his music was higher than the chickens' clucks. He moved. The hens stayed. And now, every spring, they host an annual Peace and Cluck Festival. The irony? The main sponsor is his old yoga studio. And there you have it. 27 neighborhood wars fought with fences, flamingos, and sheer stubbornness. Proof that Suburbia doesn't need armies. It just needs lawn chairs, passive aggression, and one HOA too many. So, which one deserves the golden trash can of petty revenge? Tell me below. And remember, love thy neighbor, but keep thy fence high.